glad that you can hear. There's an echo. Okay, one moment. And now, has that echo stopped? Is there still an echo?
Yeah, I think he thinks it's like Instagram, but can't join his YouTube live. That's our only problem right now.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be a way to add you as a guest speaker. And I'm concerned about the audio. Every word you speak is repeated 2 to 3 times. That's very strange. I'm using a headset right now. Are you still hearing it?
Oy, Rai, my idol. Ikaw daw po maliit. Rai, my idol. Rai. Palit daw. Dali.
Di, patay! Please! Dali yan, dali yan.
Very good.
Paldo, sundal siya, idol. Taka na, no? Taka siya. Ah! Okay. Bakit?
Gago ka, Sai. Bongbong, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. While he's doing that, let's.
Moderation is just for the room. Is that correct?
Okay. Let's see.
Okay.
Uyawa.
Oh.
Patay. Wala na, naglagay na, nagulag makro, yawa. Ano ba? Wala man din iluwal ni. Ano ko ni si Rai, hindi kita lupawag mo.
Okay, I clicked on moderator, but I don't see how.
Teachers!
I don't see how he's able to. If you're still in the room, Korean Tarzan, you should be able to request.
Huh. I don't know how.
I didn't know it would be this complicated. Okay, I clicked on profile, and there's no invite to speak or any of anything that remotely looks like an invite. Participants, okay, maybe that's it. Okay, one moment. Well, with Discord, most will not be able to access Discord
Oh, I see.
unless they download Discord. So that's why I chose YouTube for now. Anyone can join YouTube. Discord, that's not the case. They will have to actually have the link. And that's even more complicated than this because Discord doesn't really provide direct links to a server. So that's why. Let's see, I'm going to attempt to go on Discord right now. So it can be bypassed.
Only problem is I gotta be able to mute my mic because I do have some background noise of people speaking. Microphone. Let's see. How would I add Pharaoh? That's the question.
Alright, I've created a channel on Discord, so for those who have access to Discord, this channel should be readily available to you. You more than likely, well, actually, you don't have to download. You can go through the web. Just go to discord.com. I do think you have to have a Discord account. You have to sign up and log in.
Setting system sound.
I think you can just log in with a Gmail account. But in any case, since this is problematic, and we can do a Q&A, then Discord it is. I'm going to post the name of the forum or the server in the chat room so that you can actually look it up. If you need to, you can just add new on or add profile on Discord.
Ayan na, Lod. Ayan na, Lod. Uy, hulong na. Hulong na. Ayan na. Dito na. Di pa na. Hulong. Barilon.
A little bit of technical difficulties, guys. Sorry about that.
Okay. Setting up the permissions on here, so you should be able to get it. And here's the name. I'll post it in the chat room for everyone. I'll stay on YouTube for a little while until everyone. Okay. This is say when they join the waiting room, tap go live. Okay. YouTube app. I'm actually not on the. I'm on the computer. Tap create. Okay.
So there's another way we can do it. Just set to Pharaoh. I want to figure out how to give Pharaoh my my account.
goes YouTube for now. Okay, channel is set up on Discord, and here is the name of the channel. I'm posting it currently in the YouTube chat room. That's the actual Discord server. The general server is this one. So you can add that and then just come on in to the chat room. I'm going in there right now. I'll be in this one too if you have questions. I'm actually on Discord at the moment.
Weirdly, his server is not popping up.
Bombs everywhere.
Isa man na. Soy dad. Isa na soy dad. Soy dad jud na ba?
Tagak ka niyang okay, guys.
Ah, klaro kay Tiyo Bayot. Oh, klaro din kay dad. Yabo ka dad. Sa puna taka.
We're almost there, guys. Almost there. I just need Pharaoh to add me, and then we're ready. We're about to start, guys. Sorry for the difficulties.
Oh, here we go. I've got the link. Wow. Okay, here's an actual link from Discord.
We're about to start, guys. Sorry for the
Alright, here we go.
difficulties. Hello, Pharaoh. Do you hear me?
Hello, how are you?
Very good. Is it?
One moment. I might be muted. Hold on. Okay, there we are. I don't think I'm muted, but if I am muted, can you hear me? Can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Pharaoh.
1 second. I might have to get out of this. Yeah, mute that.
Now recording.
Yeah, Pharaoh, if you're speaking, nobody can hear anything at the moment.
The link is again posted in the room.
Pharaoh, we do not hear you if you are speaking.
seems to be a conflict between the YouTube and the Discord chat room. I can only have one open at a time. It does not allow me to use both microphones or use both rooms and one microphone. So one is muted. And with that in mind, I will be exiting the YouTube room and going directly to Discord because it seems like the YouTube room is just not working, or there's some setup that evades me at the moment. So until everyone is over on Discord, I'll leave this open just for a few moments and then go to Discord, adjourn there.
Pharaoh, do you hear me right now?
Apparently, I can be heard on YouTube.
Pharaoh, do you hear me right now?
Okay.
Pharaoh, are you here? Hello, Pharaoh?
Are you able to hear me?
Hey, yes, Pharaoh, we can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay, perfect.
Can you hear me, Pharaoh?
You can in your mic. The red warning. Any small text below. Okay. Right, so if I'm being heard, we can begin.
Pharaoh, can you hear me? Can anyone else hear me?
Okay, Korea Tarzan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Pharaoh, can you hear me?
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Huh, I'm gonna exit and then come back in. We'll see if that works. Hello, can you hear me, Pharaoh?
Hello,
Hello?
hello.
Pharaoh.
Anyway, okay, if anyone is hearing, just say so. Open your mic and if you can hear. If you cannot, indicate. Okay,
Yeah, we can hear you.
okay, perfect, perfect. So we can begin. Korean Tarzan, are you able to get on your mic?
Yes, Pharaoh, do you hear me? The chat says they can hear me, but
Okay, is that, I think I just heard you.
okay, perfect. So Pharaoh, sorry for the
Yeah, he's cutting it in and out.
Okay,
Am I still cutting in and out?
all right, give it a go again. If you're using a headset, that might be the issue.
Hello, hello, hello. Are you guys hearing me?
Yeah, I don't hear him at all now. But everyone can hear me.
Okay, I've exited and come back in. Are we good now?
Okay, there you go.
Okay. Let me just do one thing and tell me if it's still working. How about now?
Okay,
Perfect. Yeah, Pharaoh, sorry for the misunderstanding. I'm streaming Discord, like our Discord discussion on my YouTube. So for the people who cannot join Discord, they can also tune into my YouTube. Hello?
okay. Yeah, you're cutting in and out.
Oh dear. Let's see.
I had to end the YouTube stream because there was a conflict. So perhaps you'd have to do the same thing.
Pharaoh, how is it sounding okay right now?
You're cutting in and out, but you can be heard right now.
Okay, well, what I was saying is I have Discord, the Discord app being recorded or streamed, so people can also tune into my YouTube and listen to this Discord, if that makes sense.
Can everyone else hear? Both of us.
I can hear you both.
Okay, perfect. Then we can begin now.
Okay, Pharaoh. Well, I guess the first question, do you hear me, Pharaoh?
Go ahead.
Yeah, first question is, how does someone...
Oh, before you do that, it's good to greet everyone who's here. Just you're not name by name, but just to greet everyone. I always acknowledge everyone, just because they're taking time out to be here. So I always say greetings to everyone. That's a cordial thing to do for everyone.
Very good. Yeah. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. Sorry for the technical difficulties. And I will carry on into the first question, which was, how does someone who exists in a world that seems to be dominated by money, like what would you recommend to the average Joe or the average man who's caught up in the system? How does he conduct himself? Does he forego the world of money, or does he does he go into the woods, or does he somehow uh, use money but in a more righteous sense? How would you respond to that?
Well, I wouldn't respond to it. For one, one of those questions that
Tay,
you're in
mabumba
a
na.
world where you have options.
Di
It's
na
up to
try.
you if you're going to, if you want to consider those extreme measures, depending on the, how you look at it, and in the realm that we are in this empire that we are in, it could be considered extreme. But it's up to you if you're going to make those types of decisions, if you're going to live, in a sense, or exist rather, without any type of so-called money. You can make that choice. Or if you are fed up with the empire, then you'd have to really, you're still going to have to do something extreme. In this case, build a community and work with those who work with you and work together and see if you can do something in a kind of a hybrid sense. Use money for whatever purposes, while at the same time not requiring money within your community, your enclave or your niche, and use money while you're in the empire. If you're not going to bring down the empire single-handedly or in a group, you know that you have to exist within it. So it's not about utopia, or it's not about what could or should be. It is about what is. And if you are endeavoring to drastic changes in the empire, because this is nothing new, then you have to exude that in every way and build toward it in everything, every thought, every pattern that you decide to make a part of you. If you decide to procreate, then it's part of the path for you and for those who come after you, your progeny, and for those who may not even be your progeny, but those who are also in the same path or have converged in the same path. So you're not living just for yourself, you're living for the future to make the change. And of course, there are other options as well. One can utilize this called energy of an empire and set yourself up in a so-called a legal sense, where you find a landmass, small landmass in a country, and you set yourself up in a legal enclave with all of the so-called documentation in place and anything else that's necessary to add a buffer around you. Mind you, with those buffers, there are certain things that may or may not be available to you. But you have to set these things up. Nothing comes easy. You want to fly, but you're not even crawling yet. Nothing comes easy in that regard. It comes easy when you make it happen, when you truly be it, become it, not just armchair talk about it. You have to really live it, breathe it, and do it. Doing it alone, in a sense, solo, it's kind of like the tale of the red hen. You you're still going to have to build that community, and getting others to have that same inclination is probably the toughest challenge. Going against the empire is a given. The tough way it is, you know how it is. But building something together with other souls, with other sentience, that's probably the hardest thing, because everyone has their own limits and anything that goes with that, and strengths as well. When you are of one accord, then you are supportive and you don't give up. That's the main thing. A lot of so-called movements, that's why I don't really go with movements. Anything can have a movement. Your bowels can have a movement. So I don't go with movements. They have a lot of strength when they start out, then they peter out.
Ay, number ni mo, babe. Ay, number ni mo. Ay, at
Uh, uh, uh.
Tarabul. Ay, grabe. Nasa ba yung tarabul? Ay.
Just to give you a little bit of context, because you see a lot of things happening in current events, and it seems like it's kind of at the stage where it's changing a lot. It's morphing the way the empire works with social media and all of. Hello. I'm not too sure. I mean, honestly, I don't really believe anything that the Empire shows us either. I don't know. I'm a little bit disillusioned, but I'm just curious. Is there a way to bring down the Empire, or is this a futile kind of a thought?
You know, and basically you can say empires are parasitic, but take for instance the parasites that exist within. Are you willing to go the route, to go the thorough distance to make sure that you keep parasites at bay or keep them under wraps and continually and truthfully face them and do what you need to do to make sure that they don't reoccur or they don't come back again? Are you willing to give up the whatever it is, the so-called foods, the so-called lifestyle that manifests or brings about parasitic conditions? One might be, you might be, but then you'll find there are others that are not. And this is, I guess you can say, the residual challenge for any community to be of that one accord. You know it can occur, you know it does occur because so-called wicked cabals, they're able to work together for wicked causes. Parasites work together. So if wickedness can flourish, then what's wrong with the so-called good? Self-interest usually is one of the reasons why the so-called good fails. The disability to work as a group, as a collective. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, that's the other thing is then it brings into discussion what are the things we should eat? Because we're talking about parasites, and I'm assuming we're talking, I guess you could also talk about mental parasites, but if we narrow down and talk about the physical parasites that happen because of what we input into our bodies, and on one of Taylor Durden's podcasts, I heard slightly you talking about hygiene, and I wonder if you were referencing natural hygiene. So if you could just comment on that.
Okay. Natural hygiene, what do you mean by that? It's a little vague. Are you referring to living in a natural setting with nature and all of the accoutrements of nature as uh, as your guide?
I
Or are
believe
you referring to some?
I believe this is included, but what I specifically meant was the study of natural hygiene, or they also call it the terrain model, where it's speaking of how there's a species-specific diet that's correct towards our anatomy, and that, for instance, if you eat cooked foods, you're actually, making dirty what is inside, and so for instance, the germ theory came into play because they were trying to make it seem like your responsibility was void and something outside could come and attack you. But the terrain model and natural hygiene, their response to that would be like, we need to eat the raw things that are right for our anatomy in their right quantity, and therefore nothing would really be able to take the organism to a good state, to a state of dis-ease. Is this ringing any bells?
Hmm. The first thing that a sentient comes in contact with typically or ideally when it comes to sustenance is the breast milk from the mother. And obviously that's not the case for many within the last maybe 100 years or less, maybe a little longer. With the introduction of formula, with the introduction of dairy products, for some, drinking the milk of a cow at a particular age is for survival purposes because it introduces certain types of microflora into the gut. As a result, that sentient is able to thrive in that particular niche. Outside of that niche, it's going to encounter problems. Well, yes, food is meant to be, sustenance is meant to be local. That's one. Um, Applying heat to food is often necessary depending on the staple, whatever it is. Sometimes the heat is required, depending on the type of heat. Sometimes the heat is required to make it edible, period, not just chewable and digestible. Sometimes the heating helps it to become less virulent in terms of pathogens that might be in it. There's various reasons why you would heat something up before you'd eat it. Now, cooking it to a degree where you now either caramelizing or crystallizing or causing something else to form on the so-called food, yeah, that's going to create more issues and challenges for your digestion. That's a given. You're also going to be making an environment within, and environments are unnatural, but you're going to make an environment within that will now become a resident environment. You're going to now have to have flora that will assist you with that environment. That means it's going to encroach on the natural flora that you came here with, or that you're imbued with from the time that you started ingesting mother's milk. Now you have either encroachment from other life forms that don't belong, but then proliferate and become part of you, or become part of your digestion. This also manifests as a result of going against what is allegedly, or pardon me, supposedly natural. And when that occurs, these patterns develop, and these patterns will determine many things, not just the existence of alien life forms and the penchant for, or the proclivity for problems, as you said, diseases. I don't use that term, but these problems that can become chronic over time as a result of negligence, as a result of the detrimental effects, not just of what you eat, but of the unnatural spaces around you, what you call environments. They all come together and impact. Then you add to that a lack of knowledge about how to ingest, what to ingest, and when to ingest foods will exacerbate all of these issues. And now you have perfect empire denizen, someone who's frequently sickly, moody, whatever, um, with all the various problems that, sundry problems that can go with being a sentient in a non-niche situation. A niche is supposed to support you, and you have a communicative connection with your niche. What you put out in terms of your compost or your waste product is not unhealthy. What you take from your niche is enriched. It has all of the necessary components for your thriving, for your structure, for your ethereal portion. Everything that you require is supplied when that communication link is unbroken. It's not just cooking. There's a lot of factors that are involved that separate you from what you call the so-called natural way of ingesting, and that is hygiene. Hygiene is not just cleanliness or how to prepare or how you maintain your vessel. Hygiene also goes with your natural connection to the realm around you. You're brought into a realm where you're supported by that realm, or you're alien to it. Most sentients don't recognize the fact that they're probably in places that they don't belong. And this is as a result of encroachment, so-called colonization. Like your gut, things don't belong in your gut, but they colonize you. This is what happens. So you're seeing it on a macro level, on a macro scale. And then getting your sources of sustenance from places that they don't, that not supposed to come from. And then they're not viable, meaning the nutrient electrical factors are gone. They're dead sources, and now you compound all of that together. Yeah, you're going to get these so-called statuses called disease statuses. There's a variety, obviously, and there's always some pharmaceutical to address it. What do? You first develop your humbleness or humility, and you look at truth unflinchingly. You recognize that more than likely your progeny, your progenitors put you in a place where you don't belong. Your arrogance keeps you there. More than likely belong in a different land mass. And from there, you'll find that those are the places, or that place is where you belong, and that's where your food source comes from.
Okay, Farah. Well, I'm not trying to, do some kind of an attack or any of this, but I'm just saying, personally speaking, I've, when I've tried to become more humble and tried to learn about these things, I've been led from like the alkaline diets of Dr. Sebi, and then slowly more into the so-called fruitarianism. But I wouldn't say fruitarianism. I think that's a little bit too extreme. But I've been led towards, again, this hygienic diet. They say species-specific hygienic diet, and they seem to say that all forms of heating is not good. Like, for instance, if you look at other animals that look similar to us in anatomy, they're never heating their food. So all these animals are, perfectly fine. And that's why I'm very curious, because I guess I'm at a crossroads, right? Because I've heard like Dr. Sebi talk a little bit about like how if you cook something that's alkaline, into an ash, that ash will still be alkaline. So there are certain foods that are better than others, so on and so forth. So could you clear this up a little bit? Why don't other animals also eat cooked foods predominantly? And are human beings somehow like, do we need to be observing a different diet because we can use fire?
But not everyone is the same. You have humans, you have mankind, you have man. So not everyone is the same, that's one. And not everyone comes from the same source. So some people can digest to a degree raw milk, no problem. Others cannot. Some people can digest, certain groups can digest the actual blood from an animal, others cannot and should not. So you eat according to many factors, but primarily your lineage, your and your locale. Where are you from? Literally, you're connected to that land. And no matter how long you stay in a place, if you're alien to that place, you're going to be adapting. And adapting is a short term, it's not supposed to be a long term thing. Also, it's like I've used this analogy before. It's similar to or likened to someone who's received a transplanted organ. You have to now take anti-rejection drugs in order to maintain that organ within a space where it did not come from and does not belong. So when it comes to the so-called meal style or diet, as you said, of a sentient, of an individual, it has to be based on various principles. And one of those principles is that you're not an animal. And two, you don't have you don't have the teeth of an animal. You have teeth, but you're not built for tearing apart animal hide. Even if it's a rabbit or a duck or a chicken, you're not meant to do that. The lymph from these creatures can often cause you major issues, health issues, if not take you out completely. So you're not designed for that. You don't have the gut flora for that, for one. And of course, as I said before, eat like anything in this realm. You must be wise when you use it. You don't just randomly and negligently apply heat to what you're going to ingest. There are various forms of heating. There are various ways to heat. There are various ways that are going to produce an effect that is similar to heat without fire or flame or sun. You know, for example, acid from certain types of fruit can also do certain things to certain components or certain materials, such as protein, so-called protein. Some say don't eat anything that has a face. Don't eat anything that would run away from you because it's attempting to save itself. Okay. Then there are those who do eat it, and are they living off of that mode that I mentioned earlier, the adaptation mode? Adapting as a result of some past catastrophe or past displacement that put them in a realm where all they had was access to small game or so-called game and fish or animals from the sea or some body of water. Certain things you're just not supposed to eat. It's simple. You're not designed for it. There's no reason to eat it. They have a purpose in everything has a purpose in this realm. And if you're going to be eating the things that are required, for example, people eat decomposers and they're not supposed to be eating that for various reasons. Bottom feeders, from water, not supposed to be eating those, crayfish, etc., and so-called shrimp, crabs. You're not supposed to be eating that. They are there for a purpose. Certain types of bars are not to be eaten as well because there are no transport mechanisms nor true receptors for them. So in addition to being a hybrid material, it is going to be rejected. And if you continue to eat it, you're causing a huge upset within. You don't ingest those things. There's a lack of basic knowledge that should be spread from guardian or parent to child or to youth and carried with them. That's not really done. You learn by mimicking, and you learn through what tastes good. So you're basically on a immature mind path, brain path when it comes to sustaining self through, fuel, with fuel and food and nutrient. You're not on a maturing path, which is supposed to start with the knowledge that you pass down. Most of the things that are passed down are not worthy of being passed down. They're unhealthy. But that again is based on entertainment and taste, not based on sound knowledge. And so you get this overindulgence, you get exterior forces coming in and dictating or persuading your efforts. For example, the food pyramid is an example of that. That's an external force coming into what is intimate and cultural and based on heritage, but imposing itself, and people, many, many millions have allowed it and lived by it. To this day, people still do. You're not supposed to be eating 3 square meals a day, whatever a square is, and you're not supposed to be eating 7 days a week. But that's another story.
Okay, Farah. Well, so I totally understand that and how there are mutations and like for instance, yeah, like a white man perhaps can digest the milk or let's say blood because they've mutated in such a way. But there is a belief, and please confirm or say it's not true, that for instance someone like Yaki Awaken says the fruit diet or like the diet with the highest angstroms of energy, that's often the terminology that's used, can be applied to everyone, whereas the meats, the certain locale stuff is more based on the certain mutations that occurred. Is that true?
Well, first, what you prefaced it with your example, what is a white man?
Well, sorry for a lack of terminology, but I just mean someone who's more pale, who's kind of adjusted to those colder regions, and perhaps.
Nordic,
Sorry.
Nordic or Siberian?
Perhaps yes. I'm not too familiar with the terminology, but that seems correct. But the people that would have less access to other foods, hence would have to start to experiment. So, well, again,
The Sab tribe of Central Africa, they're not pale, and they can digest and do raw milk and mix it with blood. They don't kill the animal, but they bleed the animal and they mix it with the blood and they drink that, no problem. But they're not pale, nor Nordic or Siberian for that matter. So as I mentioned, it comes from what you, based on so-called culture and adaptation over time, your vessel becomes resilient to certain patterns, and others may not be able to live that way or do that. And so you also remember the microbe of this realm also dictates the the path, the convergence path, the efforts and the ways, the morals, etc., the mores that people will bring into their own world, into their own thinking, based on a microbe. That could be a virus, that could be a bacteria, that could be a parasite. And these various groups, based on the microbes within them, their flora, they can do certain things that others cannot do because they lack that particular environment within,
so,
based
Pharaoh,
on
just to clarify, I'm sorry to interrupt, but are you saying that some people would also need to adjust to, let's say, raw nuts, fruits, and seeds? Because this is what I'm kind of focusing on, like, oh, and like certain kinds of leafy greens that can be eaten raw. Would some people have to adjust back into that? Because again, my original question was, can this diet be applied to everyone, or is that kind of a fallacy?
But why are you living by a diet in the first place? You shouldn't be living by a diet. As I was saying before you interrupted, you have to get a grasp of where you've come from, where you fit. And if you don't, you're going to be eating based on whatever comes your way, whether it's so-called culture, whether it's bad habit and practice. You're not going to be eating according to the niche that you should be eating according to. People don't even eat in season. Many don't even eat in season as a result of the empire and the nature of industrializing something so intimate as so-called food. You're really not supposed to be eating tropical fruit rampantly just because it grows. There's a time for everything, and this realm is overused. It's abused. There are many minerals that are stripped from the very soil and the waters in the soil, in the aquifers, as a result of nonstop misuse, abuse. So just imagine your vessel living this nonstop snacking, eating, defecating, urinating constantly without a so-called jubilee. You're supposed to allow the soil and the water to recuperate and relax. And by the same token, you are also supposed to only ingest certain fruit, certain so-called seeds, certain nuts in their time. Outside of their time, you're going to be eating something with low vitality, more than likely rancid, and definitely out of quote unquote so-called season. Therefore, no one should be just adopting a diet based on what? Based on the fact that you can? Mm-mm. No, you ingest food respectfully and for self and for whence it came, the creator originator, and you ingest it in that regard, and that's humbly and wisely, regardless of where you are. There's a base form for everyone. People who live in regions where there are not berries, because in most tropical places you don't get viable berries that you can actually eat. They might be small, they might be tart. You're not going to get the typical berries that you would get in regions where you have deciduous plants or trees or 2 or 3 or 4 seasons. You have a cold season or frost. You're not going to get those there. So what do you have to replace that in the nutrient sense? You might get it in a minimal way from other fruits that suffice for people who are in those regions. Everyone within their own realm is the way it's supposed to be. But outside of that context, you're going to be pushing it, your health. When people in the past would travel, they would take staples with them, sustenance with them for a time, and they would travel at certain times of a year, in order not to tax themselves or be outside of their natural niche. And when they adapted, but that was temporary. It's like a crutch. And when you're ready, you return to your ambulatory state. You don't stay in that disabled state. And everyone's living in a disabled state, ingesting things that they should not be ingesting just because they can, because there's a violation of nature. There's a violation of this realm. There's no true diversity. It's all false. You cannot force biodiversity. Biodiversity occurs naturally. So this is what's happening now. And as a result of that, you see the degradation and the detrimental effects on health, on longevity, so-called quality of living. That's part and parcel of an empire. An empire is not designed to help you be comfortable. Empires are designed to make sure that you stay in a fear mode, that you stay in debt, and that you do not come together, and that you have no idea what trust is, which makes it difficult to form a community. So that's the way of an empire. But as I said, it starts within you when you want to be truly, if you want to use the term radical, you start within. and you recognize that you have to maintain patterns. And the patterns of health are to periodically clean that first house thoroughly, repair it, remove the residue that you have that has built up, and keep in mind where you are. Be honest about it. We know we're in an empire, and all of those altruistic things that we all want to happen, we recognize that, yes, that's great. It can be, it's not a pipe dream. It is a dream, and dreams do happen when you make them happen. We recognize that. But by the same token, we realize there are ways and means that we have to put into effect. Such as, for example, when you mentioned earlier about, you started off with money and monetary systems. You have to protect yourself. You have to create buffers. Otherwise, you won't be able to live a so-called vegan or healthy lifestyle because you won't be able to afford the so-called food. And yes, that's adaptation in itself. You're not supposed to be paying for something that came from a tree that grows freely, or from the grass or from a bush. But the acceptance of it, the group acceptance, is why everyone is where they are. Going outside of that would mean maintaining a buffer where, okay, you get your own quote unquote land, allegedly. You put it in a trust or some so-called form to protect yourself. You get more than two or three others to be on that land with you. And in one generation, after the elder member passes, you bury them on that land. You remove that place from the so-called tax basis of the whatever it is, the municipality, in order to get some type of so-called or quasi-alloidal title on the place. You grow based on the respect of for, meaning you know the ways of incoming and outgoing. I'm referring to the life process and life cycle, and you grow your food accordingly. You treat your husbandry with animals respectfully. Certain animals will provide your grasses, they will maintain your fertilizer. You do all of the various things that are necessary to be a true steward, and you will recognize true health in even in the midst of this chaos in this realm. Otherwise, it's just the same old, and I've seen this over the centuries.
Okay, Pharaoh. Well, we kind of touched on talking about how to clean that residue, or that perhaps you would call it lymphatic stagnation or metabolitic waste. What is like? What are your views on autonomy, and autonomy in specifically talking about, let's say, long periods of not eating, or this so-called breatharianism, where people are saying they don't need anything from this world anymore, and like kind of similar to what you were saying, they're saying the empire is just trying to convince you that you need these things, but our divine state is, you know, so-called without food. What would you say to that?
Hmm. More power to them, and you can. I don't put names on these things, on these activities. Um, that just makes them a trend. But if you are doing that for those who are privately doing that, great. Literally, power to you for that. And you just keep in mind the knowledge aspect, the true knowledge of, or knowing the, the, the meaning of sustenance, and what manifestation of sustenance truly is. That's the one of the keys behind or within so-called breatharianism, for example. For many, it is just a wish or something you've heard about or read about. That's great for them. And you'd have to crawl before you can walk when it comes to certain actions or pastimes or endeavors. You literally just don't jump into them, and you have to have a reason, true reason, respectful reason for it.
You know, because personally speaking, I've done a 40-day fast with just water, well water. I probably would have used distilled if I could do it again. But, uh, you know, even though I do eat and I do want to take part in um, eating again, day to day, I do have this feeling kind of creeping up on me where I'm just sick of needing things. And so, is this kind of a path that you wouldn't recommend this path, right? Like, I mean, is it very futile to say we should try to create communities around breatharianism, and possibly needing less and less from whether it's the empire or the desires of the body? Is this, uh, not a responsible thing to do?
I wouldn't say it's irresponsible. Again, you have to make that choice or that you literally look at that as an option, not a choice, but look at it as an option. And you, as a maturing sentient, recognize the consequences and do what you must do to either buffer against any negative or imbalanced outcomes or deal with the imbalances as they come and repair them. Those are your options when it comes to these practices. Building a community around so-called breatharianism, that would be just like any other ideology. They have a tendency to fall flat after a point because, what is there after that? Your respect for this type of living and doing has to go beyond just the act itself. You recognize what sustenance is, you recognize your capabilities within to, pardon the overused term, but manifest the residual, which would be the nutrition that you allegedly get from called food sources. Um, if you are a recorder, database, what you do, everything that you have consumed, through the orifice of the mouth or through the eyes and the things that you've read or through your ears, have the laboratory within to manifest it. For the things that you have experience with, like the red apple, the green apple, or whatever, you already know what it tastes like. You can envision it. If you've done study, which you're supposed to study, you know exactly some of the components or most of the components, if not all of them. You already have them recorded in you. Therefore, would it be necessary to eat an apple again? You eat an apple again, what, to remind you what an apple tastes like, or because you're addicted to it? The claim is that you don't get addicted to things that come from nature. You get addicted to things that are doctored and adulterated and unlivened. And you don't get addicted to nature, but it is, in a sense, an addiction. Otherwise, you might be just, in a sense, fooling yourself into thinking you need this because you're low on thing, low on carbs, low on vitamin C, need to replenish. What causes you to become low on a so-called nutrient? Well, environments. That's what environments are built for. Empires generate environments. Environments require fuel, fuel that comes from your sentient energy. So you get drained and therefore you require sustenance to replenish in some way, shape, or form, some modicum, that you can do the same thing all over again. Mind you, when you come here, you're already you already contain certain factors. You get other factors from breast milk. And yes, you can be depleted. Can you actually replenish? Or are you just in a mode that you can never hit?
So I guess what you're kind of
You have,
hinting on is, are you nourishing yourself or are you just continually stimulating yourself? Is that what you're saying?
that's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay, Pharaoh. Well, us personally, you know, I mean, you have spoken about how we should return to where we're originally from. Just to give a little bit of backstory, it may be a little bit out of place for me to be doing this, but my father was a Scottish American, and then my grandfather was a missionary who came to Korea, and basically my family ended up here. So my mom is Korean, and now I'm trying to continue and help a community in Philippines, and our whole thing in Negros Occidental Colonia Divina, it's called, um, and our whole thing is about the Garden of Eden. We want to recreate the Garden of Eden. So I'm going to branch off into two questions here. One is, what do you think about the Garden of Eden story? Like, because I know some of the Gnostic interpretations of the story saying that, the snake was actually the wise one, and then that overarching god of the Garden of Eden was actually Yahweh or Satan, perhaps. And then that's one question. And then the other question is, should we create a community based on many fruits and trying to, recreate the Garden of Eden, if you will?
Hmm. On that topic, I seldom speak because there are so many angles to it, and everyone's going to have some form of opinion about it. So I leave that for the masses. As far as developing a community based on Eden principles, there's a book by an author, last name Kloss, and it is called Back to Eden. Can you truly go back to Eden? Well, what you can do is live according to the supposed principles that were set forth in the account about Eden, which was to live off of things that were produced from trees and bushes. You lived off of seeds, nuts, and sometimes fruit, and the herbs. That is the translation that's found in Genesis regarding life in Eden, or at least sustaining and sustenance in Eden. And that book, Back to Eden, is about something like that. It's about using natural formed or naturally formed materials such as herbs, and using them not just for ailments, but using them for day-to-day purposes to enhance, to enrich, to cease, to ignite or incite, which is what you would use herbs for and what you typically are using or ingesting food for. One of those various actions. Literally, when you break it down, that's exactly what you're ingesting these things for. The taste is a temporary perk, if you want to call it that. And you return to Eden, and you return to Eden, I suggest you read Genesis. It will tell you that you cannot. It is protected. All of the above. Anytime it comes to knowledge that is freeing or expanding, brain expanding, of course it's going to be tainted or sequestered. That's just the way it goes in the empire. And have truly wise sentience running around. Not too many, of course. The main thing in an empire is to just keep the level of emotion on high. Fear, the desire to not necessarily procreate, but the desire to allegedly regenerate through a sexual some type of sexual activity, or not regenerate, just to allegedly enjoy supposed perk that goes with procreation, but not procreation. And then, of course, feeding off of the empire as it subjugates and oppresses actual access to true nature. You don't really access true nature through an empire. You shouldn't have to have a middle person to get to what is freely available. The beings of the empire, whether they be the wealthy, your political systems, they don't create, they don't have that power. But they do have the power to get in the middle of and in between and maintain these modalities under the guise of so-called law, under the guise of so-called civilization, but always maintaining a fear complex to it all. If you don't do certain things, then you won't have access to food, shelter, whatever else goes with it. When you recognize this, just looking at it, and it's not deep. It's literally on its surface, easy to see. It should make sense to you before, making sense to any of us or anyone. It should make sense to you first. So, does it make sense to you? Okay, you need a catalyst to bring out what's in you, to educe what's in you. So, studying, I'm not going to tell anyone not to study, but what you do study and how is key. So, even if you have the built-in knowing, you still have to access it. You still have to get beyond certain factors that are blocking you from it. If you want to say that you've been inculcated and indoctrinated to the extent that you doubt that you have anything in you other than an emotion or a sense of up, down, right, wrong, then you're going to need that proverbial or that figurative diploma that says, okay, your studying has paid off and now you know. There are things that you still have to do in order to, if it's in you, to bring it out of you. And then, of course, the content. What are you studying? If I were to say thermodynamics and physics and put you up against someone who's actually a so-called expert or student of it, you go toe to toe with them and answer the same questions? Possibly, possibly not. So that means that the knowledge that they have, they studied and acquired it. The affinity they have for it is the only thing that differs. You may not have an affinity for it. And what usually occurs when people are acquiring so-called knowledge, they develop skill set, or they like a scar tissue. Skill set is either going to be all encompassing, or it's going to just be open like an open wound and allow them to take in more. But empire structures will determine how much more. Most people just focus on one thing, like a very myopic way of looking at it, and that's it, no more. Others recognize that you have to be an autodidactic mind or brain behind it. Once you acquire one thing, you move forward. That's the thing about knowing. Yes, these capabilities are within you, but you still have to bring it out of you. What are you bringing out of you? The capability to know, even though you're studying what has existed before you and may exist within you, you still have to bring it out of you. And it's expansive. If you go by the limitation theory, you can only take but so much, or you don't need but so much. When it comes to knowing, literally the sky is no limit. You're only limited by what you allow to limit yourself by. If you think that that's as far, or you're limited by so-called need, necessity. If you don't need any more, or this is what you need for a particular high-paying position, or for a particular purpose to build a buffer, then is that how far you're going to go, or are you going to continue after that? When it comes to community, for example, you're going to require people who have skill sets, but everyone should have within them a penchant for knowing more and becoming more than just what they set out to do. That's fine to be expert, if you will, at what you do, or a few things that you do, but you should wear many hats, as the idiom goes. The actual saying is jack of all trades, master of what? They tell you that, yeah, they say it's master of none, but that's not true. Not quite. What I'm saying is that you have the capacity to learn, to absorb, and know. You are only limited by what you accept. If you've accepted that you have limitations, isn't that's as far as you can go, or if you accept that this is as far as you want to go because this is the necessity. You don't require any more than that, then that's as far as you'll go. But you have the capacity for more. Not like your stomach. Elaborate a little. I answered it then, but I'll just repeat just a little. I mentioned two groups. I said, for example, I said the Maasai tribe. That's in the so-called continent of Africa, in the central area of Africa. And then I also mentioned certain Nordic groups and certain Siberian groups. Plain, they existed on hearty meat and fat and dairy. And no one, at least based on from what I've read and sometimes observed, seem very healthy, clear skin, longevity, no issues. However, the same does not apply to someone who is from, let's say, Aboriginal from America, or someone from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, or someone from Spain or Ireland. All those people, under the current so-called installment of empire, many of them would be classified as so-called white. So you can't, that's why I asked you earlier, so-called white doesn't exist. And the same people, if you were to feed them a Maasai diet or the Siberian, the so-called Mongol diet, many of them would be sick over time and show signs of the lactose intolerance. There are groups that can eat certain types of foods. Many do eat partially cooked or raw meat. Many eat blood or drink blood mixed with milk. And I do suggest that you, it's easy in this day of instant finding out or instant knowing, you can go online and just look it up right now as I speak, and you'll see people doing exactly what I just mentioned and not having any problem with it. They've done it for centuries at least. It's their mainstay. It's in their so-called diet. But you couldn't do it. I would not do it. That's not from my heritage. And I'm not talking about culture or practice. I'm talking about my gut flora wouldn't take it. Could you or I adapt to it? Probably, but there'd be vomiting, probably, diarrhea, dehydration. You would literally have to force yourself over time to adapt with it, and it would definitely impact everything about you. As I said, adaptation is not meant to be permanent. Well, if you're, anyone in the so-called Garden of Eden and the lineage that proceeded from that bloodline, they're forbidden to eat or drink lymph, no blood. You drained the animal, whether it would be a calf or sheep or whatever, you were not permitted to drink blood. So I'm not referring to people who come from or proceed from the so-called Garden of Eden lineage. Mind you, not everyone, according to the account, comes from that lineage. Not everyone is of Adam. Get yourself 3 different Bibles, and you can start from there. A reference Bible to help you do some form of transliteration. Familiarize yourself with some of the older languages, Paleo Hebrew, not the bastardized New Hebrew, Old Latin. And then, of course, because you're reading books that have been translated, for one, into English, and do cross-referencing. Study these books. It's okay to do that. This will assist you in knowing at least some of the connections that have been used throughout time in, at least in a scholarly way, or even beyond that. And I'm not referring to religions at all. But of course, religions have carried a lot of the brunt of this, and this is how many experience these accounts from Bible and other accounts from so-called history. And of course, recognizing that history has been adulterated, doctored. More than likely, I'm not going to put a percentage on it, but I'll just say a large amount of it is false or doctored or lies, whitewashed, changed, altered, and you name it. Of course, because in an empire, why not? No knowledge goes, no true knowledge, and truth definitely does not go unscathed in empire. Look at your politicians. There are certain factors that go with these groups. Very few politicians want to be poor. That's one. So you can start a checklist. So-called wealthy people run companies. They have employees, many employees that are disposable. This goes with the territory. The same thing applies to constituency. Constituents are disposable. And most don't recognize this. Most devotees don't care or recognize this. When I say devotee, I'm talking about voters. So when you become a politician, or rather when you're picked based on bloodline or whatever other connection, you know that wealth goes with it. You're not going to find a poor politician, maybe on some low level realm, but even then, they endeavor to get out of that. Or they just, they know they're going to have a continual employment, and that means some type of paycheck. But for the most part, none of them, even the ones that say nice things and things that make you feel good on the inside, all of them are participants in this empire, and they don't work in your favor or your best behalf. Try going up to see any of them in your state capitals, and not only in your state cap. I'm referring to any country, whatever your setup is, your jurisdictional setup. Try seeing some of them. You have better luck getting an autograph from a celebrity.
Pharaoh, this may be a little bit of a dangerous topic to tread on, but maybe we'll proceed with caution and we'll kind of tiptoe around it if it's possible. And if not, we can just go to the next topic. But can you speak a little bit on the whole Trump thing and how, because personally, I was a huge Trump guy before. I was a huge Trump supporter. I thought he was going to save the world. But now I'm starting to think he's one of them, and that there are so-called maybe these military underground bunkers, if you will, and that these are the kind of last resort area that these so-called elites and politicians have as their kind of runaway thing, which is connected with their whole Revelations story making, where they will run to when they cause World War III and bring the apocalypse or the reckoning, so on and so forth. So, what do you make of this whole political situation? You don't have to comment, but I just wanted to know your opinion or your thoughts.
I have no opinion on it. It's, as the saying goes, no pony in the race. I don't think along those lines ever, because it's the same thing all over again. You have to be astute about these distractions. For one, if you've gone to high school, have you gone to high school before? An actual
Yes,
four-year high school?
yes, sir.
Okay, because some people go to, certain types of schools, and they just bypass that whole scam. But the high school mentality is what you see playing out. There's no one man or one woman that's put into any place of power, so-called power, that makes a difference. They're just there to satisfy your pep rally desires. They answer to those who control them, and it's not their devotees or their constituency. Obviously, there are factions among the constituency wealthy, of course, that they have to answer to because they control businesses, they control their chambers of commerce, they have to answer to them. Anyone else, you don't rate. Looking to this, any one person to be the savior or the scoundrel is not wise. All these people are players. And it's the same thing. If you didn't see what was going on before and didn't recognize that it happened before that, you got caught up in it. You've been blinded. It's the same thing. It plays out the same thing. If you didn't look at them, just go back and see. You had a so-called, I'm using the US politics now. You had a Democrat. What happened under them? Then you get a Republican. What happened under them? It's the same thing, the same scenario. The Republican leads you into the so-called war situation. The Democrat comes in a little later and takes you out of it, and you get this liberalism. It's the same thing. What's being missed is that encroachment is never addressed. Most of these people doing these atrocities, I'm not talking about the war atrocities, I'm just talking about existing on lands that they're not from. When all these people you see on television, for example, or internet, doing all this bickering back and forth, they're controlled opposition, and all of them don't belong on the lands that they stand. So while one of these politicians might be saying this Mexican doesn't belong here, well, guess what? Neither does that Irish person, or that Italian, or that German, or that Nigerian. None of them are from the land that they are on, that they're arguing over. They're in someone else's house, using someone else's house to cause trouble, throwing rocks at someone else's house. So what's going to happen? Their house is not going to get damaged. They can go back to where they came from. And this is all around, this is a discombobulated realm. People standing in places, and they use the masses as the fodder. None of these people are going to battle. None of these people are pressing buttons. They use you to study how to fly a drone, or they use you to study how to shoot and go and harm someone that you've never met. And you go and do it for what? Because you believe that these people are ultimately right and good. You're not thinking. You cannot be unwise in an empire. This is what you are witnessing. Unwisdom. Unwisdom. You have to be astute about this, and you can't look to one person and start this silly dialogue about, this person's evil, this person's bad, the orange man is bad. He's just a player. He's going to do whatever the next person's going to do and the person before him did. So why are you looking to them to do anything differently? They are players. Look beyond them and find out who's controlling them. Who do they answer to? And they do answer to someone. And also be cognizant of the fact that they are, and if you are like them in some way, shape, or form, you are all guilty of being in someone else's house. Until that is addressed and rectified, you're going to have all of these things going on in an empire, just like you have an organ that doesn't belong in a body where it didn't come from or originate. You're always going to have this chaos. You're in a discombobulated realm.
So, I mean, I often say this too, that, both sides are the sides that are going to distract you. It's just like sports or, like an arena, right? We're all there to just forget about the fact that we hate our lives and that we are trying to be entertained, or at least that's the kind of game plan that they have. And so I often tell people to focus on the cell and oneself, and that perhaps if we clean internally, the outside world would respond. Would you say this is an accurate assumption, Pharaoh? Or maybe it's not an assumption, but a conclusion?
You always have to conclude that. You always have to, because that's what you start out with. You have to look at self and make sure that you are not that person that point a finger at. Soldier, the cop, the what's the popular term? The Karen, the idiot, the fool, the person using the N word on themselves. And I'm not referring to people of other races. I'm talking about people who call themselves black, calling themselves the N word. I'm talking about people who call people who are not so-called black the N-word, and people who use the term black, or people who use the term white. Are you that? Why are you calling yourself a so-called color? You're using an adjective when you're a supposed pronoun. Are you that thing? Are you that person? Why are you a person? Person is a non-entity. It's a dead thing. Are you a sentient? Are you a living, breathing soul? Have you done the inventory? Have you gone through the complete analysis of true self? Probably not. But yet you want to fly and you want to breathe and you want to do breath work, but you don't want to really face truth. These are all distractions, and when you fall into them, they distract you from the main thing, yourself, your true self. And then before you know it, true self is decrepit and drained, has no fight left in it, or gets caught up in whatever's going on. You're now 55, 60, and you've got your grown children, your teenagers, and you're worried about their lives, and they're not listening to you because why? You didn't listen to yourself. So it's the same thing, these recidivist patterns over and over again. When do you put a stop to them? By looking at yourself first. You cannot blame the so-called presidents of any of these nations. They just use your body because you let them. Soldiers don't come from space. They're not drones, not yet. They're your cousin, your neighbor, the guy that fixes your car. And in some instances, they're the women too, because women are allowed in militaries too. You know them. They might even be you. And it's not just them, it's anyone in uniform who literally looks truth and so-called righteousness in its face and still does the wrong thing. When did that happen? And that's nothing new. When you can address that in self, with self, truly, you'll start to see a huge difference. And doesn't have to be a critical mass. So-called history has shown cabals. What is a cabal? It's a small group. What is a minority? It's a small group. What is a remnant? It's a small group. Those are the numbers that make a difference and that actually move empires, that bring down empires. You're shown these signs time and time again. The little things. It's the little things that were manipulated to bring about that so-called pandemic. It's the little things in you that you want to get rid of each time you do a purge, not the big things. It's the little things that they're looking for in CERN and other so-called colliders and clandestine locations. They're looking for that little thing because it's within that tiny thing, the thing that is there and you don't see it, that there's true power. And everyone has that within them, the true power that you ignore because you allow yourself to get distracted. Bring into yourself inner calm, not trendy, not based on what you believe or feel, but go through, cut through all of that surface. And there's a lot. The more you allow it to build up, the more that small part of you atrophies. When I talk about calcification, that's the worst kind of calcification because you cannot decalcify it. I'm not referring to your pineal, I'm talking about that core. This is what all of these distractions are after. They're after that core, and you don't even recognize you have it because you're busy fighting this other person because you don't like their face or whatever reason, or because you want this out of your so-called life. No, stop that right now. This is why I mentioned humbleness and humility. Everyone's going through some kind of garbage right now as a result of what? Someone else. Your landlord is overcharging you. Your so-called boss is a pain in the whatever. You have an ailing relative, or your parents are just not getting it and it's strife where you are. Or maybe the person you're in bed with, the so-called partner or spouse, is a nightmare. Or maybe you are doing things that you just can't get through because you feel pushed and driven to do them, or you just don't have enough money. All of these distractions will keep you from that core, but you must never allow that to happen. And once you recognize it, like you do right now, at the sound of my voice, now that you know this, there's no going back. You can go back, it's your choice. Now that you now know what you have to do. And I'll close there unless someone else has questions in the room here, because I know some might have some quick questions. I have an appointment with a student, and I went a little overboard here. And I did promise to meet with them today.
Pharaoh, there are no more questions. You are welcome to leave, but can I ask one last question?
Certainly. Actually, I see the students in the room, so go ahead. Okay. Well, you're good. There's no issue.
Okay. Oh, I see what you mean. You mean questions with the mic. Okay, that's completely fine. But no, I wanted to say, what is Christ to you? Because many people throw around this word, Jesus Christ. Christ is King, but it seems very superficial, right? It seems like just because they hide behind the word Christ, they don't have to act in any form of way that seems moral or any of this. So when you interpret Christ, do you go towards astrology with the 12 disciples like this? What exactly do you make of that?
I not use that term at all. I've heard it before, and I know what it means, but I don't use that terminology. And I reference, that's why I say, if you asked me earlier about studying, and I mentioned read your Bible or read a Bible, not any Bible, pardon, not any Bible. There are certain Bibles you just want to steer clear of. So there are Bibles that are more objective, if you want to call it that. And there's one passage in the book of Isaiah, um, Isaiah 29, and there are more than other references to it. And I'll paraphrase, and I don't like to paraphrase often, but it says something like this: I am the only Lord, and there are none other beside me. So if you are the originator, creator of all, a part of for those who can grasp this, part of a unified field, then you don't require a son or a daughter. And you definitely are not going to have your son or your daughter as your spokesperson and or standing in your place. It's a contradiction. When you refer to, for example, the Tanakh, or some say Torah, and the laws, it says immediately in the law, thou shalt not worship or place before me any other so-called God. That would mean in so-called Apocrypha that this Christ consciousness or Christ character is an exact contradiction to the law. Because why would you go against what you have mandated and then all of a sudden change up on that and say, okay, it's okay now, you can worship someone else in place of me or have an intercessor? There's no book in the Bible that says that an intercessor is needed or required. But yet, many in this realm use intercessors, people that come in between or act. You do it in your everyday life. It's done in business. You get a lawyer. You can't fathom so-called law or legalese. You should be able to. Or you get someone to sell your house because why? You don't own it. And you don't understand legalese, and they know how to set you up with a mortgage and do all of the fine print and get you back into debt because you don't know it. Or you just say you don't have time to. Again, intercessors. You're supposed to know many of the things that you are doing. If you are indulged in something, you're obliged to know what you're doing. Just don't do it. Don't drive a car if you don't know how to fix it. Or you'll get took every time, or taken to the cleaners, as some say, every time by mechanics who know that you don't know. Therefore, when it comes to such things as Christ or Christ, that's fine for you if that's where you are. Maybe you haven't graduated yet, but you haven't been reading your Bible either. And if this Christ word is in your Bible, then you need to know, is this a legitimate term that and story that you should abide by? Or is it something that you need to do a lot more analysis and recognize perhaps you've been going in the wrong direction? There are no, not only an intercessor, but there's no one who can take a bullet for you when it comes to your judgment. And isn't that what Christ's consciousness is all about? The dying for your sins. This is the mindset of many religions. You can do your dirt, but then you can then ask for forgiveness and all is okay. Because someone else, it's a blood cult, a death cult. I'm not pointing to any religion, I'm pointing to all of them. No accountability. You're responsible for what you do as an adult, not talking about children.
Pharaoh, and just to kind of put in the part of the question that was missed, I just want to reference Colossians 1:26-27, just to reaffirm what you're saying, to corroborate Christ in you, the hope of all glory. So the Bible verse is saying that Christ is in you. And then in Psalms 82, 6, where it says, ye are gods, which Jesus also quotes. And so then it brings me to the question, is not Jesus the Son, or the kind of the properties of the Son, and then that should be embodied with an individual or self? Is this correct?
What kind of sun are you referring to? You're referring to the solar sun? Are you referring to Helios? What are you referring to when you say sun?
Well, Pharaoh, maybe this could be the next topic, but we could kind of hint on it right now. But when it comes to like the shape of the Earth, I am of the understanding that we are in a cell, and so that the sun is actually within us, and we're just seeing an outer fractal. So when we look up into the sky, it's just a property within us. So that's what I'm kind of referencing. But that many people, when they're acting, unchrist-like, they're not, you know, being vibrant like the sun. They're not, spreading love. They're not spreading life. Something like this. Would you say this is, uh, kind of what a Christ-like attitude would be? And would you say that Jesus represents the movement of 12, like going through the 12 disciples, kind of what astrotheologists say?
That's all in another realm, and I don't go into those realms for many reasons because everyone's going to have their opinion on them. As I said before, you have to do your studying on many areas. You brought up a lot of different topics there. The names, for example, the nomenclature is controversial. Has anyone that, yourself or anyone that studied those names and from whence they came? You might find that they point to a different angle altogether. And why anthropomorphize yourself with a so-called luminary? You're not a luminary, you're here. And your so-called goodness is the result of what you do, what you imbue, what you think, and what you put into effect in action. That's goodness. You're not a luminary. You're not going to be shining. You can do that metaphorically, but I'm talking about reality, so I'm not speaking in metaphors. So what you do with brain and hands and will is on you. Can't put it to something or someone else, some ideal or some ideology. It comes down to you. And this is the danger of all of these so-called concepts. Got a Jesus, but on the same token, you've got a Mother Earth. You have to really boil it down to what's true and what's actual. I can point to you, I can reach out and tap you on the shoulder. You're not touching the sun. You feel the rays of the sun. All of these embodiments are fantastical. They're great as far as exemplifying uh, something that is outside yourself, but you don't look to it and make it part of you. It's like an example, but it's not for you to take it to this literal level, is what occurs with many different things, not just religions. The sun is wonderful. It has a purpose. Respect it. It was put there, what it's supposed to do. The realm beneath your feet, same thing. But you're not to worship these things.
Okay, Pharaoh, that's pretty much what I have. I can't find any more questions, so how would you like to proceed? Would you like to end it here?
I mentioned before, if anyone in the audiences has questions, this is open for that before I part.
I just wanted to ask, will this be available on YouTube, the recording?
Not on my channel because I could not get not on the Pharaoh's House channel, but I will get a copy from Korean Tarzan. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. But Pharaoh, I understand you're recording this. The beginning portion of the live was not recorded, maybe the first 10 or 20 minutes, because the OBS required me to have another setting to get my desktop audio. So the beginning part was a little bit lost.
No worries, but you'll still send a copy of the YouTube stream that you recorded, correct?
Yes, so right now this is being uploaded live to YouTube on my YouTube channel, Korean Tarzan, with a C in the beginning instead of a K.
Okay, and I'll get a copy of that, correct?
Yes. Please tell me where to
Okay.
send this.
Okay, no problem. We'll do later.
I'm so sorry. I guess I have this habit of Oh, okay, sorry. We have a question. Can you speak of the importance of dreams to mental health? And we have another question after that.
Okay, that's a vast area. Experimental health or mental health can be improved upon when you manage the dream realm, when you address any blocks or obstacles to that dream realm. And there are many obstacles, from pharmaceuticals to stress factors to outside sources, opportunistic sources or forces that block, or all the above coming together. And then, of course, there are also internal blocks that happen as a result of trauma, maybe even unrecognized trauma. So once those are addressed, that will have a direct effect on so-called mental health, balancing of mental health, from everything from depression to just stress, everyday stress. You'll see a huge difference. Obviously, because the deeper you go, the more acclimated you become to knowing and recognizing your dream patterns and dream recall and developing a language, you start to become resilient, and you'll see a huge difference in how you interact with others, and as far as how you look at yourself. It'll make a huge difference. Dreams and mental health, basically like your brain organs. You're not separating yourself from the dream and the organs. They go part and parcel. You need those conduits. So your mental health and your dreams are connected, obviously. Make sure that the connection is not channeled elsewhere by outside forces, nor blocked by internal forces, the things that you do to yourself. And with that regard, some of the things that you do, such as the things you might consider innocuous, can also impact and do impact. So just be mindful of that as well. Time in front of these little screens or big screens, and even the things that you ingest, all these things will have a huge impact on not just the dream, but the so-called mental health as well. Keep that in mind. You'll improve it by improving both.
And Pharaoh, some breatharians or so-called autonomous people say that as they become closer to true autonomy, that dreams are no longer relevant. Do you agree with this? Because they say that they do not sleep.
No, you sleep or you re-energize as a result of what goes on in the sympathetic mode. So if not ingesting or having that particular part of you going on within a large percentage of your waking time, it would probably stand to reason that you're not going to require as much so-called re-energizing or so-called sleep as others. And as a result, you probably are not going to be dreaming because dreams occur when you are in the dark or when you are in the so-called sleep mode. If you're not sleeping, you're not going to be dreaming. It does making that correlation of just because I don't do it, I don't require it or don't need it. That's faulty logic.
Very good. Okay. Well, because they often say, like, let's say dreaming is done in the unconscious, and our aim is to be conscious. But we'll quickly go to the last question that I see on the Discord chat is, when kept in their proper niche in functioning in truth, what is the purpose of emotions? What is their proper role in our internal guidance systems?
What is the purpose of emotions in general?
Yes, sir. It says when kept in their proper niche and functioning. So I guess he's saying when in their right place, what role should emotions play in our in the guidance of our lives? Maybe this something like this.
Before you start looking to emotions to have a role in your everyday living, breathing, doing, etc., your activities, you must question, are you maturing? Have you been maturing your emotions? That occurs over time. There's such a term as emotional maturity, and it is profound. It is a there is a direct connection between your emotional maturity and your so-called behavior. But not only that, but in terms of how your internal responses go. Emotions have to be maintained and managed, otherwise they do rule you and they can do things to you that you don't necessarily witness outrightly. They're very subtle. To boil it down to what they really are, they're a combination of the so-called synaptic reprieve of your nervous grid and biochemical reactions as a result of your things that you put into yourself. That includes all stimuli and things that are tangible. You put all that together, you get your emotional state. And if they are not managed and not maturing, they can be controlled by others, usually are. They can also rear up when you least expect them or out of your realm of so-called consciousness, meaning out of your control. This is what happens with typically to a large percentage of people. They encounter a so-called trigger or scenario that they have been through before, and emotional mixes come together and manifest physical detriment, usually some type of sympathetic reaction, stress reaction, an increase of certain types of so-called brain chemicals and hormones that you don't want released, but are there as safety mechanisms in a sense. So you get hormones that are going to normally protect you, now working against you, harming kidneys primarily or adrenals. Cortisol being your number one so-called stress factor hormone, which is not a bad thing, but becomes a bad thing when it is out of place. And that out of place is as a result of unfettered emotions. Being rational is not, should not be equated with steady emotions. That's the misconception. Just because someone is rational, that means that they have a control over their emotions. No, not at all. Someone who has calmness that you can sense and that you see, and it's not a facade, that is a level of emotional maturity, no matter the situation. Just imagine self in the most traumatizing or challenging situation. Do your emotions rear up? Do they take over? And usually they're a mix of things. You have primary and tertiary ones. Is it your fear? Is it mingled with rage or anger? You have to literally test these out. The best way to do this is to put yourself in situations, or you don't even have to put yourself in situations. You can, if you're strong enough, you can think about them or witness them in some type of scenario. For example, in not a movie, something fictional, but in something like a news report. Or today, you can just look on any of these social media things. That's the whole purpose of them, is to rile up or rear up your emotion. So just use those as training fodder and see what emotions. Chart this in your journals. Write these accounts down so that you are now doing what you should have done and what your parents should have done over a period of upbringing from your formative periods. Now, this is how you mature your emotions, but you also protect them because they can always become vulnerable. So you protect your emotions. And there's a way to do that. I show people how to do that. I help them train them that they can train themselves on how to respect and protect their emotional states.
Yeah, and it seems like the ability to mourn is very human, you know, like the ability to be happy. Let's say if you have a child, you know, so like you're saying, if it's not in a incorrect circumstance, it's kind of a blessing to be able to feel and, you know, even if it's an irrational thing. But anyhow, we have another question saying, do you celebrate or acknowledge the spring equinox?
What was that before you go to that question? You said even if it's an irrational thing, don't let that slip by. What did you mean by that?
I meant like just because the emotions sometimes come to you in an irrational sense, like you don't necessarily logic your way into happiness coming or logic your way into a certain moment of sadness, of sudden sadness. Couldn't it kind of be like an orgasmic thing at the same time? Like it can.
No, you should know exactly what's going on within you, and it shouldn't be something that is haphazard. You let one go, you just leave yourself open. You have to recognize that you are the vessel controller, not your emotions, not any one organ within you. You know, for example, the tongue and the taste buds, the receptors, and then of course other receptors within you. They have a purpose. You respect them, but by no means, because for that matter, you can say that they are the cause and the blame, and you have no control over it. You cannot do that in the so-called legal system and get away with crimes. That's because, you know, an irrational, un, unwarranted or unwanted, unexpected emotion rose up and just led you to shoot someone.
I,
Although many have gotten off on situations like that.
I guess what I meant was not like in an like to be irrational. That's not what I meant. But I'm saying that because this world is not 100% mathematical rationality, that perhaps emotional play a I don't want to say positive, but another role that's completely something other than rationality. That's what I meant.
Okay.
But yeah, Pharaoh. So the question I'm seeing now is: do you celebrate or acknowledge the spring equinox? And if I could follow up on that, do you believe this is the cross that's referenced in Christianity?
Hmm. I don't know about that, but I know that this is the, you know, depending on where you are in the realm, this is the new year in terms of new arrival, or I'm going to say new birth of in nature, in terms of nature. And timing wise, I am actually in the process of creating, manifesting a new grid, not a calendar, that is based on truth, based on nature, as opposed to this current installation in the empire, the Gregorian calendar and all its derivatives. It leads to more debt and confusion, and definitely inconsistency with the vessel and nature itself. So I don't hold any type of allegiance to calendar systems or crosses, etc. I do know that when so-called spring arrives, that is a new year. There's nothing dormant. It's not like so-called January 1st in this so-called hemisphere where things are dormant and nothing is growing. That's not a new year. A new year occurs around the time of a so-called equinox.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any more questions, Pharaoh.
Okay. Anyone in Discord have questions? And you have access to your mics, so you don't have to type. You can actually ask your question by voice.
I think I asked my question. I just wanted to make sure that I can refer back to the recording due to missing out a majority of it, but I believe you addressed it already. So I'm from the Discord chat myself, but yes.
Very well. Hey, seems like those are all the questions, and I must get going, as they say, because I have to meet with someone. And for those who did not have a chance to ask questions, or maybe they felt shy, write it down in a journal. And maybe the answer that you wanted to get or need to get will come to you.
Well, without further ado, thank you very much, Pharaoh. Is there anything else you would like to leave us with?
That
Oh,
would be all.
oh,
Go ahead.
and also thank you, everybody. I know I rush into things too much, and you've reminded me of that. So thank you, everybody, for joining as well.
Excellent. So with that in brain, everyone, we will see you soon. You can go to PHAROH'sHouse.com if you have questions. And of course, as I mentioned, there is a grid on its way. It's not a calendar, because I know that everyone is tired of the calendar system and this confusing time situation. So keep your eyes open for that. All right. Well, until soon. I appreciate all of your your persistence in the early part of this broadcast, because there were some technical issues, and your patience and presence are appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Likewise. Thank you. Presentation was great as always.
Alrighty, guys, that's about it. So I'm gonna wrap up the stream here, and we're gonna try to get the initial portion of the video. I'm gonna try to get the recording for this video and send it to Pharaoh. Thank you.